Hey everyone, thanks for joining. In this conversation, I thought of bringing someone who's a leading program manager at Microsoft or product manager that talks a lot about his journey in storytelling, how he communicates the value of cybersecurity. This is Richard Rittiver. Thanks so much for coming along, Richard. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do at Microsoft?
Absolutely. Thank you, Andre. Nice to be here. Richard Diver, I'm the technical story design lead in Microsoft Security. So I've got a 20-something year career in being an architect or an engineer or being out there in the field and doing consulting. And I've spent the last 2 years in marketing, learning how to make that a bigger story. So yeah, story design lead. It's a cool title. I love it.
Yeah, that's a great title, actually. Something I hadn't heard of until I came across some of your content. And that was an internal content, by the way, right? So I saw your session on storytelling, and I was amazed about how you take that to the next level, right? Thinking deeply about the power of storytelling to convey a message, and that's incredibly powerful. And I was amazed by that. And I started following you on LinkedIn, and I saw that you have this great take on diagramming and drawing and representing cybersecurity by diagrams, and you focus
Yeah.
a lot of that, right? So in the last year, you had a newsletter just on that, right?
Yeah, I was learning that the power of a diagram really connects all different levels of technology experts and also the people who don't get technology quite as well as they should.
Yeah.
At that time, I just finished doing a lot of work around Sentinel. So I wrote a book on it, and I was writing a lot of diagrams, and I was teaching a lot of people about Sentinel. And those diagrams were extremely useful internally at Microsoft and to all of our partners. And somebody encouraged me to say, how do you do that? Like, that's not a natural skill. There's another guy called Mark Simos who I work with,
Yeah.
and I
Oh,
used to
wow.
look up to him, and I'd say, like, I'd love to be able to do like what Mark does. And I found out I do it. So me and him work together now. We have different approaches, but we bounce off each other. So I put that newsletter together to try to share with people. As I look back over 20 plus years of career, I've been creating these diagrams as I go along. It's just becomes more of a communication tool that I now use every day. Yeah.
That's awesome. And of course, Mark Simos, he leads the MCRA, right? The Microsoft Cybersecurity
Yeah, that really
architecture.
complex diagram. Yeah,
Yeah,
and he also has a CISO workshop and a bunch of other
that's right.
great topics that, again,
Yeah,
it starts with the visual, but the way we both kind of work on this is we understand the content at level 2, 300, 400. Sometimes we really understand it, and then we try to summarize it as simple as we can. And so while a diagram looks simple and easy, it's really hard to make it simple. So the more complicated a diagram is, the harder it is to understand it. But if you can look at something and get it straight away, even if it's not 100% right, it starts a conversation to go, what about this? And what if we did this? And then that's how you get everyone on the same page.
an example that I have of leveraging some of your drawings, by the way, and I was just mentioning to you a little earlier, right? It's the modern SOC architecture diagram you have, and this is in your, of course, in your published newsletter on LinkedIn as well. So you have a great diagram showcasing different data sources, the value of them for security, and where they should be ingested in your SOC, and that is just amazing because I managed to use that in some of my customer conversations to explain to them exactly that message in a way that, like you said, try to simplify the messaging and making sense of that. And so that was a great showcase of the value of drawing for
Yeah,
cybersecurity
that
that you do.
that one came about because when I was studying Sentinel to write the book, I hadn't done SIMs before. I hadn't learned about what is a SIM, so I had to go from scratch and go, what is a
Yeah,
SIM? And when you realize that you're really just taking a lot of data sources and trying to centralize them in one place, it's a nice idea, but it's really expensive. And so the conversation that comes out of that diagram is that you need the data to be somewhere. Sometimes you want it central in the SIM, but sometimes it already exists somewhere else.
yeah,
So it's a big conversation about, is it valuable to have it all in one place, or do you just want a percentage of it? And so the idea of drawing the lines and the boxes is how most things start. You draw boxes and lines and stick them together. Eventually you realize, yeah, there's a pattern there. The raw data being generated every second of the day, not all of it's useful, but something in there is. And while a lot of people have the idea that they don't want to risk not having the data, so store everything, you just possibly can't do it. It's like trying to search the entire internet for all the information you want. You can't. You got to scope it down to what is really useful, and if it might be useful, I'll put it somewhere I can get to it. So yeah, I'm glad you like that one. Glad it's working for you. You never know when you put these together. Now, that's how it works in my head. I give it out there to the world to go, does that work for you? And then if other people nod their head, then it was a good thing.
Yeah, I love that you say you didn't know and you were learning about themes, and that's what helped you do it, because now I see you have 4 published books, is it?
Yeah, I've got a couple on Windows security. Then we did a couple of versions on Azure, and then I have a new one coming out on AI security. So the last year, pretty much all I've been learning about is AI and safety and security. And so I decided a few months ago, why not write a book about it? So that's coming out. That'll be my 5th one. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, and that's awesome, right? So you're learning about AI security as well, and you're helping, well, document some of it, is it, through writing the book?
My role internally at Microsoft is to help work across engineering and then marketing to try to say, what is the story that we're going to, that's why I'm the story design. What is the story? So what's happened with AI is we've been developing that at a rapid rate over the last couple of years since ChatGPT came out. And so some of my diagrams I've been creating as I try to learn and understand it myself has actually been used internally, like the ones you saw, and now eventually they're going to end up coming more and more public, or we can start to share them, or they'll start to appear in documentation in different places. And as I was going through all these diagrams, I looked at them and said that there's just a certain set of things everybody's going to need to learn about AI. And if you don't already know them, you're going to have to go and learn ethics. You're going to have to learn about governance. Some things aren't pure security. The AI just has this natural ability to have to make people talk to other teams they didn't talk to before. And so that's kind of what I try to put together in the book, is to say, how do we get everybody on the same level of understanding? So now we can either have a legal discussion or a compliance discussion or a technical complex cybersecurity discussion without AI being a scary new thing. But at the same time, there's a lot of new stuff to learn from that too.
And so this new newsletter that's coming out soon is going to cover some of it.
Yeah, so this newsletter was like, I call like season 1, where I was just dumping 20 years worth of knowledge into some diagrams. As I wrote the book, I was like, it would be good to share each chapter of the book. I'll write one more newsletter. So starting, I think, May the 5th, I hope, if that date stays. The book comes out on May the 4th, and then so May the 5th, I'll start my new season of the LinkedIn newsletter, and I'll share. The first one will be how to write a book, because I think there's some people out there really want to write a book.
Yeah.
I don't know why people want to write books, right? You want to do it? But as I find out, there are people who would love to write a book, but it's such a mountain to climb to understand how to do it. So my very first post will be teaching some of the things I learned about structure and just having a bit of discipline, but making it a bit easier to do. You still need 100+ hours of time to do it, but you could use AI. You know, I chose not to use ChatGPT or any kind of co-pilot to help me write the book on purpose. But in future, I would probably have AI help me write some of that now, because now I've done it. It's, you know, I've done it the hard way. I could probably do it the easy way next time.
Well, and you did it multiple times, right? So that's more than warranted for using something like that. Just on the use of AI to help write documentation or maybe book. I noticed lately that Microsoft in the Learn portal, some modules have been assisted by AI, and they have a call out at the top of the module. So that's quite interesting as well.
It is interesting. Yeah, when I'm uploading the book into Amazon, which is where you, if you're self-publishing, that's where you put it, they actually ask you the same kind of questions. Did you use AI to create any content? Did it create text or images? And then how much of it? And I know some people that have written entire books just using AI. And then you wonder, like, how much is that of you actually creating it as the creator versus how much is it just being done for you? And I like to own some of that, to say, well, I wrote this thing. But yeah, if you need to get the content out there, why waste 200 hours writing a book if AI can help you at least bring that down to maybe 50 or 60 hours? Maybe, if you're lucky. We'll see. I'll tell you next time when I'm thinking about writing it again in 10 years' time. AI is a little bit like the cloud was back in 2010, 11 era. we were running around as consultants trying to go help customers understand what is the cloud and how do I move from a physical data center to a cloud data center. There's a lot of learning. AI is just like that, where people are trying to understand it. I want to use it. It looks really cool. There's some obvious benefits, but there's also a lot of bad stuff. And so in 10 years from now, if I look back at what did I write in this book in 2024, it'd be interesting to see how much did we get right in our predictions and how much has completely changed in 10 years time. So that'll be fun.
Yeah, I can only imagine how much the landscape will change.
Yeah.
And being on the forefront of this new transformation, I think it's very exciting. So having some of your guidance with a lot of experience and a lot of insights concentrated into this newsletter, but also in this book that's coming out soon, I think that's very exciting, right? So really appreciate the research you've done there, and really excited to see what it looks like, because I need to know as well. So I need to know what the subject is about.
Yeah, and I wrote it for a really broad audience, but I'm
cool.
Like, it's not all me. I'm really lucky to work with so many brilliant engineers, and actually the people who helped me review the book and tweak and tune it and make sure it was right are from our legal departments, or they're from customer-facing departments, where everybody's got a different point of view of what kind of questions need to be asked and answered. And so, you always hope it goes well, but you don't know until you click publish, and then you wait and see. Let me know what you think when you get a copy.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be amazing. I will let you know. And as we talk about AI security, I was looking at your season 1 newsletter, and there's one specific post on developer security. Would you like to walk us through a little bit of that and what that means for AI security in general?
Yeah, absolutely. So that one, when did that come out? June. That's just as I was starting to transition into this AI world and learn more and more about AI. So I just learned all about developers and developer security. So I'm glad I got to put that one in the post. As you go through it, what you'll see is I explain just how complex developer security is. And again, it's one of these things that everybody's got a different opinion and point of view, and which framework do you use. So the very first diagram in there is comparing Microsoft's security development lifecycle, the SDL, with NIST's SSDF, which is the secure software development framework. Now, they sound very similar, but what you see is this overlay where the SSDF and the SSDL are both covering very similar topics, but have a slightly different focus on what's important about it. The next stage of that was I went in even deeper to try to understand, as a developer, what is the flow? Like, what do I do from the point of using my keyboard and mouse to start writing code to then checking for security components or testing, or submitting that code for into a Git repo? And it ended up in a spreadsheet. It was that complicated. There's so many things to capture. Like, there's open source components, and there's third-party tooling, and then there's your own code that you wrote. And now we even have, at that time I wasn't even thinking about GitHub Copilot, but now you even have GitHub Copilot creating code for you. As you go through, you'll see then I started to draw my diagrams and start to put links together. And this is the image 4, is this where you've got this code, build, deploy, run. And as I went around a lot of different people at Microsoft trying to understand how people think about it, these 4 things came up over and over again, that they're knowing that coding is coding. Coding is the fun, hopefully, of getting in and creating something amazing. But the build and deploy is the CI/CD pipeline. And again, lots of different names for it. Testing doesn't appear in here because I'm talking about security, and as much as there is some security and testing, these 4 things, when we get to run, that's the most important elements at a high level. So I started to map it and see if it worked. Like, does these 4 things matter to like SSDF and SDL? So then I start mapping them. You can, and as you scroll through the images, you'll see it gets really detailed, little eyeballs. So luckily I got to work with great friends at Bridge Partners, especially a guy called Ted Hendershot, and by articulating my ideas to him, he was able to come up with this image that's just really simple and elegant, like code with gateways between them, code, build, deploy, run. But there's this underline of development, and it's changed a few times in the last year, but the idea that secure by design, secure by default, or just that whole end-to-end security was what matters, which is what I was trying to articulate, is you can't just do any one bit, you need to do it all. So that ended up being the kind of 5 pillars that we did. And I just ran through a few ideas of how that could be used for things like shift left. People have heard of shift left, or again, secure by design and default. So yeah, that was and this is so important that I did that last year, because in AI, it's all about the developer. And so this is starting to come back up again. We've got Build conference coming up soon. So I'm hoping that these diagrams will be useful at the Build conference when we start talking about security to developers. Yeah,
I'm looking at image 10 here, and looking at the shift left, and of course, potentially secure by design and default, like what you're saying. And I can foresee how important that will be for AI systems or compound AI solutions that need to be built from the ground up with security in mind. So I can only hope, and of course I'll keep waiting for your build session to learn more about how this comes about into the larger AI security development lifecycle.
At Build, I'll be talking about data security as well. And the big thing for developers is understanding that if you already have an existing system with data boundaries around it, how does AI break those boundaries? Or do you let it? The idea is you shouldn't let it break the boundaries. If you have existing boundaries, you need to add AI in such a way that we don't allow, because AI can, if not implemented properly, be manipulated into doing things you don't want it to do. And so if you, at a basic level, if you don't give it access to do things it shouldn't do, then it can't do those things. It can't be tricked into doing those things. And so we just have to come up with the best way to articulate it. So I've got a lot of more diagrams to create between now and Build in 3 weeks' time. That'll be fun.
That'll be a lot of work,
Yeah, that's going to keep me busy for a little while. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Richard, are there any key takeaways for the audience?
I encourage everyone to start drawing something. Like, what we see with AI today is a lot of people summarizing. There's some other words you can use, like simplify and articulate. There's a lot of different. I'll give you some words you can put in the notes section about some things you can use in prompting AI. And that's really good for taking lots of complex text and trying to get it down to a few bullet points. Think about taking those bullet points and now turn them into some kind of diagram. That's what all I do every time. Is if I read 500 pages of a document, I start creating a diagram of what is this thing trying to tell me? Like, what are the chapters and the sections, and just breaking it down into these boxes. And as you move them around on the page, it starts to, an image starts to form. We go, oh, now I see the links between what they were trying to tell me in chapter 1 versus chapter 5, and or whatever your document looks like. And that way, when you start to then, and I encourage work out loud, like no one knows the answer straight away, but when you start sharing with other people, a done diagram has saved the day so many times. Like, that's why I put in that when you go back and read the newsletter, one of my very first ones was of complex Active Directory infrastructure. And only by drawing a diagram did we get the Exchange team, the desktop team, the firewalls, the networks, like everybody could see one picture and start drawing their version of what they thought it looked like. So I encourage everyone to give it a try. You might not be an artist, I'm certainly not, but PowerPoint, boxes, lines, just start creating stuff. It's a lot of fun, and you'll find it helps you communicate better, because you have to simplify things to get everyone on that same page. So yeah, and reach out to me on LinkedIn if you want any advice or guidance, or you've got something you want to share. I'd love to see it.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time, Richard. I will put a lot of your links and the prompts that you mentioned, or the guidance in the description as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for your time, and of course, best of luck with the book. And I will be looking out for the book and Build.
Excellent. Thank you so much. See you again.
See you, Richard. Cheers.